A diplomatic standoff is brewing between South Africa and India over refusal of the Serum Institute of India to replace the Astrazeneca batch of vaccine doses that were delivered here. South Africa wants the doses to be replaced with new ones that have an expiry date. Well, to look at SA-India relations, we're joined by Dr. Charles Singala, who is an international relations expert and consultant. Good evening, Dr. Singala, and thank you so much for your time. When one looks at this report that has been put together by the City Press today, it speaks about a very strained relationship between South Africa's Health Department and officials at the Serum Institute of India about this vaccine. Could we see this spreading to not just being contained between the two entities, but it becoming a matter between the two countries?
Yeah, thank you very much, and good evening to your viewers. Yes, to some extent, people, because they will believe that the vaccines were obtained from India, and in that way that India must be held liable to the expiry or the efficacy of the vaccines. But, one has to consider the fact that this was a trade between the South African government and the company registered in India. It was not a government-to-government transaction. It was a private transaction. And if we saw that if that was a government-to-government transaction, we should have seen the Prime Minister of India and his deputy dispatching this AstraZeneca vaccine from the Indian International Airport, en route to South Africa, as well as we received it by the President Cyril Ramaphosa and his deputy Didi Mabuza. So people should not itemize it in the way that India is at fault. I mean, a business transaction takes two to tango. There was some corresponding performance from the South African government when they ordered the vaccines, that certain amount should be paid before they start manufacturing those vaccines. And I think due to the delayment of the payments during those transactions, and the last payment was also delayed. So between this period, the calculation of the expiration of the vaccines has come short of the time.
At which point would we have the governments of either India or South Africa get involved in this matter?
Due to the bilateral agreement, the Vienna Convention 1961, whatever transaction, either government to government or government to business or the two countries, has to be done in the very mutual and respectable manners, not to have something that the relationships of the two countries. So the government of India, they are aware of what has been discovered as a result of this transaction. And I'm sure they are in talks with the International Relations Minister, Naledi Pandor, with her counterpart from India, to see how they can resolve this issue. And I think India and South Africa have had a very good relationship, dating back centuries, ago and hundreds of centuries ago. We must remember that a certain chunk of South African population is made up of the Indians, and who can do away with the Indians from KwaZulu-Natal. So this relationship is not something that can be broken by a business deal that has gone wrong due to the fact that parties' performance did not adhere to certain arrangements in terms of the vaccines, as well as the homework. I mean, it is quite shocking that the Department of Health has found itself into this predicament. They should have done this research before they even ordered the vaccines to South African government.
It's interesting to me that even before we got to this point of, the AstraZeneca vaccine found to not be fully effective, at least against the new variant of COVID-19, we haven't really heard about negotiations between South Africa and some of its counterparts within BRICS, whether it's China or Russia. And yet we know that the two have also been working on developing their own vaccines. In China, in India, in Russia, we have the Sputnik. And in China, we have a Sinopharm, but no talks yet about any procurement of those vaccines. Do you read anything more into that?
Yes, we may not heard about it, but wisdom has it that the South African government, especially the Department of Health, had done very extensive research in terms of what products to procure, and as well as always, as it been in Africa, that they look at the spend, the budget that they have. And I think elsewhere, the budget was way beyond their capacity. And I think that's how they had to settle for the Astrazeneca vaccine from India. And, talking about relationships between India and South Africa, I think I can add on that others might think that the country that's supposed to be a few deprived or few left out in this business transaction is United States of America. United States of America has got about 70 billion rand spend in terms of the Department of Health, and I think they felt that Pfizer, Johnson and Johnson, and many other pharmaceutical companies from United States of America should have been given this opportunity to supply the vaccines to South African government. And I think that's why we have seen that it happens in business that you can also try to sabotage, or not really sabotage, that is a very strong word, or try to advise your client what is the efficacy of the product that they've procured as compared to yours. And I think that's why there was a team of experts from Wits University to produce some evidence in terms of the AstraZeneca vaccine. And I think the rest of the world as well, they are watching. And I think South Africa must take really their time to decide what vaccine should be adopted, whether from Russia, America, or India, or elsewhere. What is important is that the vaccine should be very effective. You can't settle for 20% or 60%. It has to be at least 80 to 90%, which we have proved that now the South African government are expecting the Johnson and Johnson jabs, coming this week. Maybe that can cushion the relationship, and as well, they will have to mend the relationship in terms of what has gone wrong. I mean, South Africa is just a buyer like any other country in terms of production. So if they signed an agreement in terms of sales of the efficacy of the vaccines, if it was advertised to treat the first COVID vaccine and the variant which subsequently came, which I believe that the variant only came by the end of last year or the beginning of this year. These vaccines from the Indian company was procured before the variant B1235 was established.
Of course, one of the biggest difficulties now is that the impression that has been created is the Serum Institute of India is simply not budging when it comes to the issue of that expiration date of April. And it doesn't look like they're going to be, exchanging the consignment that they sent for vaccine doses that expire much later.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. They will do as well. I think that, they did enter into an agreement. Vaccines, they are products or something which is perishable, and they are alive. They must be administered between a certain period of time. So they had to put up time into consideration, the time of manufacturing, the time of delivery, and the time of dispensing onto the human bodies as consumers. So between that time and the payment, the delay, they have to, which I think that the delay must have come from the South African government to make that final payment or initial payment. As we have heard from the mainstream media earlier, before the vaccine arrived in South Africa, that there was a payment which was supposed to be done, and that payment never materialized on the time. So the only issue that they have to take into law is on debate. It should be the submission of the efficacy of the vaccines, but as well, trade agreements in terms of purchases, buyer and seller relationship. Also puts into consideration that the buyer, when you're procuring the products, you must be fully aware of what you are procuring, that you've done your research before you make that purchase. You can't make a purchase now and come back that, the soap we bought from the grocery grocery shop is not very effective. I mean, the time you had the whole time to consider, to make up your decision. In fact, these vaccines are not vaccines that's supposed to be put on the shelf and waiting for the buyer to come. These were specifically manufactured for the South African government. So the Serum Institute, they've got a very strong case against South African government. Not the one that refund or whatever happens, I don't think they'll take back the vaccines.
That was international relations expert and consultant, Dr. Charles Sinkala. Thank you so much for your time tonight.